Let me start with something that might be a little bit uncomfortable to hear. If your company slows down when you step back, the problem probably isn't your team. So I want you to think about the last time that you took a real vacation or that you had a week where you were genuinely unavailable. What happened to execution? Well, for most founders, the answer is some version of the same thing. Things slowed down, decisions piled up, projects sat in holding patterns, and people waited. And when you came back, you probably spent the first few days clearing the backlog that formed without you. So here's what most founders conclude from that experience. They think, oh, my team isn't ready. Or I hired the wrong people. Or I need to be more hands-on, not less. And so they stay in the center. They stay available and they stay involved. And the company gets faster for a while. But it never actually learns to move without them. So here's what I want to offer you today. Your team's ability to execute is probably not the issue. What most founders have built, without realizing it, is a company that has been trained over time to wait for them. Not because the team is incapable, but because the team was never designed to move without the founder. That's a structural lag, and it forms one small behavior at a time. Today, I want to show you exactly how it forms, and more importantly, what gets installed to reverse it. So let me define something clearly before we go any further, because this term matters. Structural lag, that's what happens when a company's operating structure stops keeping pace with its growth. You grow, you hire, you promote, and you add complexity. But the decision structure, the rules that govern who owns what, who decides what, and when things escalate, that never gets updated. So what happens next? The company grows larger, but authority stays centralized. More people are added, but the decision flow still routes back to one person. And here's where it gets subtle. Structural lag doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up on your P&L. It doesn't trigger an alarm. It shows up as friction. Meetings that feel productive but don't produce decisions. Projects that start confidently but stall mid-execution. Leaders who are smart and capable but still seem to need you on everything. And the founder typically absorbs it. They just work harder. They stay more available. They add more check-ins, which temporarily reduces that friction, but permanently reinforces the structure that created it. So let me be clear. Most companies in the $2 to $15 million range are operating with the same decision structure they had at 500,000. The team got bigger, the revenue got bigger, the complexity got bigger, but the operating structure, who decides, who owns, who escalates, that never got built to match. That gap, that's the structural lag. And the symptom most founders feel when it hits is this: the company can't move without me. Here's what I want you to understand. Structural lag, it doesn't just happen to a company. It gets installed gradually, unconsciously by the founder. Not because the founder is doing anything wrong, but because 4 very natural leadership behaviors, each one reasonable on its own, compound into a structure that teaches the team to wait. So let me walk you through those 4. Behavior 1, the reopen decision. A founder makes a call, the team executes, and then a week later, or maybe 2 weeks later, something shifts. The founder changes direction. Maybe the market moved, maybe new information came in, maybe the original call just didn't feel right anymore, and the pivot made sense. But here's what the team learns from it. They learn that finalized decisions aren't actually final. And so the next time they're given direction, they hesitate. They hold back a little. They wait to see if it sticks. Because committing fully to a direction that might change next week is a risk. And smart professionals don't absorb unnecessary risk. So they wait. Behavior 2, the approval reentry. A leader presents a plan. The founder reviews it, tweaks it, and sends it back with changes. This happens once, then twice, then it becomes the pattern. And here's what the team learns. Their work is always going to be reviewed before it moves. So why make the hard calls in the first place? Why stake out a clear position? Just bring the options to the founder and let them decide. The founder isn't doing this to undermine their team. They're doing it because they care. They want to get it right. But the effect on the team is the same. They stop leading and they start presenting. Behavior 3, the founder reentry. A founder steps back from a project, but then, because they're concerned or because it feels like things are slipping, they step back in. Maybe they start attending meetings they said that they would stay out of. Maybe they start asking questions that weren't asked before. Maybe they just stay a little too reachable. And what does the team learn? They learn that stepping back doesn't actually mean stepping back. So they stop making autonomous calls because the founder is still there, just slightly off stage. Behavior 4, the ambiguous handoff. A founder delegates a role. Here, you own this, they say. But the boundaries of that ownership are never clearly defined. What decisions belong fully to that leader? What requires collaboration? What requires escalation? When those lines don't exist, the team fills the ambiguity the only rational way they can. They escalate. Not because they lack confidence, but because escalation is the safest move in a system that never told them where their authority ends. Now, here's what I want you to sit with. None of these 4 behaviors are signs of a bad leader. Every single one of them comes from a founder who cares, a founder who wants to improve, and a founder who's trying to get things right. But when you put all 4 of those together, over months, over years, you end up with a company that has been trained, a structural level to route everything back to the founder. And that company can't scale. Not because the team isn't good enough, but because the structure won't allow it. So I want to tell you something that happened in my own company, because I did all 4 of these things. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that was obvious at the time. It was quiet, well-intentioned, and the way that most founders do it. So about 2 years into building, I had a strong team, smart people, people that I trusted. And yet every week my calendar filled with conversations that shouldn't have needed me. Questions I should have never received. Decisions that should have been made at the team level. Projects sitting in a holding pattern because someone was waiting for my input. And I kept telling myself the same story. My team needs more experience. We're just in a growth phase. Once they get better, this will all resolve itself. Well, it never resolved itself because I wasn't changing the structure. I was just working harder to compensate for it. And here's the moment I remember clearly. I was in back-to-back calls on a Tuesday. 6 hours of conversations that all had the same underlying theme. Someone needed me to make a call or confirm a direction before they could move forward. And I realized something that stopped me. I hadn't built a company. I had built a system that only ran when I was running it. That wasn't failure. That wasn't a structural failure. And it was mine to correct. Not by hiring differently, not by working harder, but by building the structure that would let them move without me. And what actually changes this? One intervention applied consistently starting this week. I call it the decision ownership audit. And it works because it addresses the root of structural lag directly, not the symptoms. Here's how it works. For 1 week, just 5 business days, you track every decision that reaches you. Write them down, every single one. The questions, the approvals, the requests for directions. Don't filter them. Don't judge them. Just capture them. And at the end of the week, you run each one through 3 questions. So here's question 1. Should this decision actually reach me? Not, did it reach me? Should it? Is this a founder level call, or is this something a competent leader in the right role should be making independently? For most leaders, 40 to 60% of what reaches them in a given week should never have touched their desk. Question 2. If this shouldn't reach me, what's missing that caused it to? This is the structural diagnosis question. Usually the answer is one of 3 things. The authority wasn't defined, the decision rule doesn't exist, or the person doing the escalating has learned from past experience that escalating is safer than deciding. Each one of those has a different structural fix. Here's question 3. What do I need to install so this stops routing back to me? This is where it gets clear. Sometimes the fix is a simple written rule. Decisions under this threshold belong to you, no escalation needed. Sometimes it's a defined ownership boundary. These decisions are yours fully. These require your input. These require mine. Sometimes it's a pattern that you need to correct in your own behavior. So what this audit does is when you run it honestly, it shows you the gap between the decision structure you think you have and the one that's actually operating in your company. Most founders are shocked by what they find, not because they did something wrong, but because no one ever showed them what to look for. And here's what changes when you start closing the gap. Leaders stop designing their work around your approval. They start deciding. Meetings get shorter because fewer decisions require group discussion. Escalations drop because people know where their authority begins and ends. And you start getting your time back. Not because you worked harder, but because the structure started working for you. Let me leave you with this. The question isn't whether your team is capable. They probably are. The question is whether the structure you've built gives them permission to act like it. If decisions still routing back to you, the answer is probably no. And that has a correction. If you want to take this further, if you're ready to look at the full decision structure inside your company and understand exactly where the bottleneck is and how to remove it, watch the Decision CEO Reset. It's a free masterclass that walks you through exactly how the founder bottleneck forms structurally and what gets installed to remove it. It's not a sales pitch with a teaching wrapper. It is a structural diagnosis of one practical correction you can use before the session ends. The link is in the show notes.